All right, we ready? We ready?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So today's December 13th. I'll call the meeting to order. This will be my last time calling the meeting to order because one of you will be mayor next time. Cooper, he's the one coming, right?
Yeah.
Anna,
Here.
Kayla,
Here.
Mason,
Here.
is it Gillian?
Yeah, I go by Monica though.
Anna. Sorry.
No worries.
Here we go.
Here.
River.
Yeah.
Eleni
Here.
and Caitlin.
Here.
All right. Most everyone's here. We'll make a note when Cooper shows up. Pretty straightforward agenda today. Definitely don't want to overload you guys. Still relatively early on in your tenure here. The first item is approval of the minutes from the November 15th meeting. Who knows what minutes are?
They're basically just a recap of what we talked about and like what we did and who was there, all that.
Well done. Did anyone else know that? Anna knows that because she was on the youth council last year.
I didn't
River did. Okay. Yeah, it's just a summary with specific points meant to depict exactly what was discussed and what the actions were. So thank you for that. The first real item of substance we have is the selection of officers. Well, I guess we need a motion to vote to approve this. So pretty straightforward. I'll go over it in a little more detail when I do the presentation about local government basics. But I don't think at your first meeting you all made a formal motion and had a vote on anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you all have a chance to check out the minutes that I emailed you guys? Are you lying? No? Okay. Any changes to the minutes? Did it look fine? Did it look like it was pretty on point?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes from November 15th?
I will make a motion to approve the minutes from November 15th.
I'll second. Guys, I'm late, car troubles.
You know that. Okay, so Anna, Cooper, Anna just made a motion to approve the minutes. You know what minutes are?
I do know.
Let's take a guess. Let's see.
Minutes? Is that like term limits?
No, no.
Okay.
Good try. Just try. So minutes, I never knew this till I started working in local government, but Anna, go ahead. Why don't you explain it?
It's basically just a summary of our last meeting with specifics on what we did and who was there.
So I set out kind of a meeting summary. They're called minutes. I have no idea why they're called minutes. I'm curious to know why they are. But hey guys. Hey John. So Anna made a motion. River seconded that. Now we'll do, since we're all in the same room, we don't have to do a roll call vote. We can just say all in favor, and you guys can say aye or yes, or nay or no. So all in favor for the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. So the next item is a cool one. One of you gets to be mayor the remainder of the term, and one of you gets to be the vice mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, who would act as the mayor if the mayor is absent. So, and I think you have a good handle on this process and what the mayor really does. I had sent out a little memo detailing the approach for appointing the mayor and the Mayor Pro Tem. Wondering if any of you have an interest in serving in that role. It's pretty straightforward. You're the ceremonial head of the group. May be asked to speak at council meetings on behalf of the group, and also preside over the meetings. Lead us through the agenda. Be the leader, you know, just like Mayor Clark is. So, but don't be late, like Mayor Clark. So the first piece is to open it up to nominations. Any of you can nominate someone else.
Do we say that, or can we just say I know? Like I moved to a point, that part. after-
Yeah, if you just want to
Say
go ahead
that.
and make a motion, you can certainly do that. But we
That's what
definitely-
that's like after the nomination.
Oh.
That's when we're like, I mean, but hey, we've already talked about who's done or who we want to be.
I
mayor.
nominate Anna Barchi as mayor.
I nominate Cooper Aaron as mayor pro tem.
So, okay, so Hannah's been nominated as the mayor. Cooper's been nominated as mayor pro tem. Does anyone else want to throw their hat in? You can nominate yourself, or you had said, it sounds like you've already discussed this, so anybody else? Any comments from the public? Sounds good. Would someone like to make a motion specific to the mayor position? Just like you made the nomination, you can go ahead and make the motion just like it's on the board here. And then it would require a second and then a vote.
That I move to appoint Anna to serve as mayor of the 2021-2022 Ridgway Youth Advisory Council.
I second.
Who seconded that?
You second.
I did.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously, okay. Same process for mayor pro tem position. Anyone want to make a motion for that?
I move to appoint Cooper Ahern to serve as mayor pro tem of the 2021-2022 Ridgway Youth Advisory Council.
I second that.
Thank you. You have a motion and a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, congratulations, Anna, you're the mayor.
Thank you.
Cooper, congratulations, you're the mayor pro tem.
Heck yeah, we're on the ticket together.
Take this together. All right, Anna, the show's yours.
Okay,
So I'll put it back on the agenda to meet the.
so next up, we're gonna do our local government basics presentation from Preston.
Well, isn't that easy? I'm gonna actually request that we go to item 4 before we do the local government basics presentation. I think we should get some good conversation about what you all wanna learn about, who you wanna hear from before I give a very, it's gonna be great, but it's also gonna be very boring type material, to be honest with you. So I'd love to get a good conversation going before we jump in.
Okay, so anyone got any specifics they want to learn about today?
So we talked about
Is
this
this just
last
today,
time.
like what we want to learn about?
Not just today. We talked about this last time, if you remember, about what topics and current event type items are near and dear to your heart, you guys are passionate about. I mean, they were in the minutes, try to capture them as best I could, although I didn't capture everything. This item is really geared towards, Anna can talk to this from last year, although last year was way different because of the pandemic and we only met on Zoom. But you all don't really want to hear from me and Mayor Clark all the time. I'm sure you all would benefit and really want to hear from outside agencies and guest speakers from other organizations. For example, last year we had, I'm forgetting his name, we had someone from SMPA and the gal from Alex Shelley with SMPA. He heads all marketing and communication for San Miguel Power Association, the local electric utility. He came in and did a really cool presentation about what they're all about, some of their programs and projects. And I think that was really well received by the group. And you know, I'd like to do more of that. I'd like to try to, based on what you all say, outreach to some of these folks to see if they'll come in here and talk to you. And you guys could ask questions and learn more about what they do, what they bring to the table, and what they do for our community. Maybe not just ours, but other communities too. So that's just an example of the SMPA one. Don't be saying bring President Biden in here. I'm emailing the White House, but I think you guys understand what I'm getting at.
I think it would be cool to talk to people that run like the community gardens and stuff and just like just environmentally conscious people, see what they're doing. Also like second chance people would be cool to talk to.
Yes.
And see like samples.
I could talk to my boss.
I also think it could be cool to learn about like what county commissioners do and like some people who work for the county. Cause I feel like we learn about like local and state and national government, but not really like on a county level ever.
Which county commissioners do, they actually get a real salary. They have a real job. So it's-
Yeah, and like I know all the county commissioners, but I have no idea what they actually do.
That's a good. So community garden, it's great. 1 second chance, absolutely. County commissioners, other reps from the county. 100%. Who else? What else?
Maybe back with the environmental stuff. Talking to like maybe businesses about kind of what environmentally conscious things they can apply to their business. Because I know when we did the bag ban a couple years ago, there was a couple businesses that reached out like saying that it was too hard for them to do or that they had problems with like certain things we were trying to do. So maybe like hearing what businesses like kind of their feelings on it to then make like if then we can when we make changes so that they can work.
Okay, great. Do you have an idea of specific business owners? Do you recall who you heard from that said it might be difficult to implement what was being
The
proposed?
coffee
back then?
shop.
Yeah,
New
it
owner,
was.
guys. Oh, yeah, new owner.
Yeah, now, but I know Family Dollar, like they did that thing that they could like override our ban so that they could still use like a different kind of plastic, but it like somehow was still in the guidelines. And the coffee shop, now that's not as much of an issue, but they had a big problem with us trying to do no straws. And so just kind of maybe like seeing what company, like what businesses are thinking, you know, and then like finding alternatives so that we still can implement those like environmental changes.
Just like seeing which businesses are opposed to the like bag bans and plastic bans and stuff.
Yeah, that sounds great. It'd be tough to get all those business reps in here
Yeah.
at any given time, of course. That almost sounds like worthy of a survey
Yeah.
of some sort. Absolutely. But yeah, good thinking about that. Anyone want to add to that or throw out anything else?
Well, I don't know how to explain what. Okay, I'm just gonna try. Was anyone at like the Pride Parade in Ridgway?
Oh, no, I wasn't actually.
Yeah.
Okay, you know how they had like I don't know what, like representative, but not really representative of like an organization that like is like an ally for like LGBTQ plus. I feel like it'd be cool to have someone like that come in and talk to us about like how to become more of an ally for that.
That's wonderful. So actually on the agenda, the group you're referring to is the Safer, More Affirming Communities group. I think that's what they're called. They're actually going to be coming in here in January to talk to you about what they advocate for and some of the things they do, and how you all might be able to help with outreach and yeah, outreach in general. So that's great.
Because it would be cool to know how to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we want to be able to be like allies, but we don't really know how specifically.
Well, I suspect you'll definitely learn more about that. That's great. That's great.
And then I have one more, and it would be good to like learn the details of it so we can maybe talk to our school about it. Would be maybe talking to the fire department about fire safety, just because, you know, just got our first snow of the year, like really on the ground. And it's always a worry in Colorado. So just like, that could be something important to like relay to the other youth in this town, just about like being cautious. And hopefully we don't have to worry about that this summer, but just in case we do.
Yeah. You're talking specific to wildland fire, right? Yeah, totally. And yeah, they do a tremendous amount of work. You know, everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but when I was growing up, when I thought about the fire department, I thought folks dressing up in safety gear, putting out house fires. Well, they definitely do what they can in the wildland urban interface to make sure that properties are safe and secure, and really try to be proactive about getting everyone ready for that type of season. And so that's great. You know, we can certainly look to bring someone from the Ridgway Fire District in, maybe not just them, but other districts too.
Is like other places having youth advisory councils a thing? Like, do you
Other
know
places?
of any other towns that have a youth advisory council or something like it? Because
Yeah,
I feel like
Mon-
it could be cool to talk to like another place that's doing it.
That's great. Montrose has had a youth council for a number of years now, I think over a decade. That's a very interesting idea, maybe getting youth councils together to talk issues or see how they might be able to interface further. It's really interesting. URA, I don't think has one, John.
I think that Telluride is working on one, because we did that radio interview with them last year, because they wanted to start one there. But I don't know if they ever did it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great thought. Montrose had reached out to us when we were putting youth council together in the first place, so I bet they'd be totally willing to entertain that conversation and see how we might get you all together. What else?
Kind of back to the ally thing. I think it'd also be interesting to do that, not just with, like, something we had kind of talked about was helping with like peer pressure and making students and the youth of the town like feel comfortable. So talking to people who are part of organizations, like, you know, Voyager does some stuff like sources of strength, like that kind of grouping that like helps kids who feel like bullied and stuff like that, kind of talking on also how we can help with that.
We could also do that kind of thing with like the mental health part of it too, because like the school and stuff always has like counselors, but no one wants to go to them because when they talk to us, it's stuff we've already heard. It doesn't really help. So I think that's coming from us again.
Right. Thank you. That's great. Let me ask, I mean, how often, like in school, I know it really just depends because we all are in the same class all the time, but how often do guest speakers, presenters come in to do this type of stuff?
Not often.
Only
not
once.
We have, yeah.
Last year
once
we had
a month,
like
like-
a surgeon. That was cool.
Say
And
again,
sometimes-
you had what last
We
year?
had a trauma surgeon come talk to us or talk to our science class.
But
That wasn't like really.
I think like just the other day,
That's like a
and-
guest speaker.
yeah, just the other day, one of the counselors in school came to talk to us about like gender neutral pronouns, like we'll have talks like that, and we'll have last year, I know my grade, at least we had a lot of, it would be like once a month, we would have kind of a talk with one of the counselors just about like feelings and how people are doing, but people wouldn't take them seriously because it was just like not really the environment. It was just your whole grade, like right before lunch. So I don't really think it was focused right.
And also like, I feel like it's not really like the most efficient if you take a bunch of kids that may be struggling with like a bunch of different issues and like talk to them all about one thing and like tell them like basically just trying to make all of the individual issues like be the same thing. And like the counselors think that like you can help everyone by just having one talk, but it's like, it would be nice if we could like make it just easier for like individual people to reach out and stuff.
So like if we all had more like knowledge on what you can do to help and having kind of like a youth-led place where you can kind of get help and talk to people.
Yeah. Like also, I don't know who already said that, but like the things that we talk about with the counselors are things that like everyone already knows, kind of.
Say more on that.
They're just like, we talk about stuff that are like, it just feels like the very basic guideline of how to help kids with mental health. And it's like, just go outside, just
Practice gratefulness.
yeah, practice gratefulness, like all of that.
Take
stuff.
deep breaths.
Yeah. And
Think
I feel
about
like it would just be
10
cool to
things
have
that
a
make you
student-led thing.
Because then we could specify to what we think.
Yeah.
Especially because I think almost like every single one of us in like our interviews said that a big reason why we want to join this is so that there's a place for like youth to come to about like town issues, just like issues in general.
Mhm.
So I think that would be a good way to do it. Especially by learning from like a real not that the school resources are good, but like a real organization that actually does a lot and does help, and kind of learning from that, I think could be interesting.
Yeah, that's good.
How do you think we would choose like those kids? Would it just kind of be like an announcement thing, or like how would we choose like the people like guiding?
You mean like the people who want to reach out to us, or the people who would?
Or are we just like the school's counselors? Is that?
Like,
Or no,
yeah,
I'm being serious.
no, I feel like we could do that, but maybe just if we like,
Like there's gotta be more.
If we could like bring in like, not that the school therapists aren't real
Yeah,
psychologists, but like bringing in people that are like trained more professionally and not just towards like a academic.
yeah, or even how like these meetings are open, like say we were to have a guest speaker come that is like based in that, we could like reach out to students and like youth in the community and even adults and like say, hey, we're having this person, if you're interested and kind of are struggling at all, we're looking for help or knowledge, like you could come to this, because I think even parents would want to maybe learn a little bit to help their kids, teachers, like just having, because I don't think it's legal even for us, we can't like counsel students.
yeah, exactly.
But I think if we had just like, if we opened up things for people to learn.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, one of the motivations is, again, I know you guys don't want to hear from us the whole time, and bringing in some guest speakers to subject matter experts, practitioners, so that you can get a better handle on what they do, what they're all about. And like you were saying, you probably have peers who aren't here who may benefit from what they're bringing to the table and what they're saying. So I would encourage you all, if you haven't done so yet, invite your peers to these meetings. It'd be interesting to see if anyone ever shows up, but they're open to the public. Anyone can come to these meetings, but that's great. So we have a pretty good list. I don't know that we end up getting to everything by June when you guys are when your terms are up, but there's a good chunk here to try to start checking off and for us to do some outreach to see who might be able to come visit with you all. Anything else? Any other thoughts on what you guys want to hear about, learn about, etc.? What about law enforcement?
I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
I think it'd probably be like interesting and good for us to have like a law enforcement person come in here, especially because we're all like new at driving and stuff. I mean, like you guys aren't super new, but like 2 years is still like new.
Yeah, totally.
And we're all still.
And yeah, and we're all, yeah. And I think it's like, I don't know a lot of like, I mean, I know the laws, but I don't know a lot of like the laws, you know? I know what not to do, but I don't know everything.
Sure.
Also, like personally, I don't really know, since we do live in a small town, certainly not like we have a high crime rates, kind of learning what like law enforcement does in Ridgway, because I honestly like, I know that they like patrol stuff,
like.
if you have issues, like they're there, but I don't really know like kind of what their days are like. And just kind of learning about like the things that they kind of look out for, or maybe things they're involved in.
Sure, no, totally. So in that presentation I'm giving, I'll go over a little bit what our marshal's office does and what they're all about. But I'm glad you guys are receptive to the idea of either our marshal or maybe some other law enforcement personnel coming in here and talking about what they do on a day-to-day basis. And I can definitely see a community policing type element here. We are a small town. It would be nice if you knew our marshal and our deputies by name. Absolutely. So good. Anything else? No, good list. All right, Mayor, back to you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was looking at John Clark, I was like, oh, okay, so
Today.
now we're gonna go back to item 3, which is our local government presentation from Preston.
So you guys get to listen to me talk for a while, but I don't want it to be just me talking. So I will ask John to help me fill in some some blanks or just talk to some of the items we're going over. And I definitely want to ask you guys to ask questions as we go. Anything that might come up, just so that it's more of a conversation and not me just talking the whole time. Like you might have at school during a standard lesson. You know, I don't want to paint this out to be boring. I used that word earlier. I probably shouldn't have used it, but it can be. It's dry, mundane type stuff. I'll do my best to keep it cool and sexy. That's hard. So just bear with me. And this is going to look a lot like last year. So I'm going to review, call it the Local Government 101, Local Government Basics presentation. I'm going to come up here and send it for you. First slide is meant to depict the types of local governments. You have counties, you have cities, and cities is a very broad general grouping. It could be city, town. Over on the East Coast, I think boroughs and villages are definitely a thing, but in Colorado, we have cities and towns. Another type of local government is a special district. And I'll go into some more specifics about each of those on these next slides. So who knows what county we live in?
You're right.
Good job. Well done. So URA is just one of 64 counties in the state. Quite a few if you think about it. Some states, I'm trying to think of a few, they don't have too many counties. When you get to the bigger states like Texas, and I think California too, they have a ton of counties. But again, 64 in total throughout the state. Role largely the same from county to county. They administer county-wide programs. And the general purpose of a county government is for the unincorporated areas. So all the areas that don't fall within the incorporated limits of a city, town, village, borough, whatever you want to call it. Cities, again, it's a very general grouping, but overall there are 271 as of today. 271 cities and towns in Colorado, of which Ridgway is one. Role of cities or municipalities, another term to describe cities, provide services and regulate conduct. And I'll go into that on a slide coming up, but pretty straightforward there. And actually more on the distinction between a city and town. I've always found it interesting because there's not really a formal threshold from when a town becomes a city or a city goes back to a town. You know what I mean? If you really think about it, Ridgway's population as of this last census is just is higher than URA. Ridgway's a town and URA's a city. So that's what I was getting at when I said that. Yeah.
Isn't it because like when they declared it something, there was a certain amount of people, or there was like a post office? Is it something to do with the post office?
No,
Does anyone else
There's-
remember learning that?
We do have a.
in Colorado, it's all about size, and I think it probably stems from how big the town was when it was founded. But as Preston says, towns increase and decrease. URA's been shrinking for a while, URA's been growing, Ridgway's been growing. So
Wait, so is Telluride considered a city?
they call themselves a town.
Yeah, I'll tell you as a town. Montrose is a city. Junction's a city. Delta is a city. Yeah, it's interesting for sure.
So can you change? Like could you start calling Ridgway a city?
That's a really good question. You can't just like walk in and be like, Ridgway's a city now. There's a process.
I feel like URA should be the one to change to.
Yeah.
You know, it works. I don't know that there would be any momentum or to change. I think it works. The whole city, town of Ridgway, city of URA. But again, good question. There is a process. I've never had to go through that process to change a town to a city designation, but I think it'd be administered at the state level somewhere.
What was Ridgway's census this year?
Population.
Yeah.
Almost all.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
Wait, is that just in the town, like not counting Log?
Yeah, not Log Hill,
just in our municipal boundaries.
and I'll bring up a map, maybe at the end, a
That's
map
big.
of,
That's.
We're not 900 anymore.
steadily growing. I'll bring up a map so you can see all the boundary of town. And then we have special districts. This one's interesting and a little harder to explain, but I'll definitely give you some examples so you guys kind of get a better understanding. So throughout the state, there's more than 2,800 special districts. The role of a special district is to provide a specific service or a specific function that a municipality really can't or doesn't for whatever reason. So they're organized for a specific purpose or function. Example is water, sewer, fire protection. School districts are also considered special districts. So the best example here in Ridgway is the town, our local government here. We don't have a fire department. And that's a huge point of contention, but there's a lot of misunderstanding because we have the fire department right there, right? Or the fire district right there. Well, it's not a formal department of the town. It's its own standalone special district. They have their own political subdivision and provide services to a specific boundary. They have their own mill levy. But again, the town doesn't provide that fire service, so we need a special district to do that. I used to work in another town where the town was not responsible for all the water and sewer infrastructure or the water sewer system. That was provided for by a water, what was it called? Oh, water and sanitation district. So those are just examples. You want to add anything to that?
Well, just a couple of things. Like I went to Wikipedia and it says Colorado makes relatively few distinctions between a city and a town. In general, cities are more populous than towns, although the towns of Castle Rock and Parker have more than 50,000 residents each, while the city of Blackhawk has less than 150 residents. There's also some funny cases where the towns of Garden City, Lake City, Orchard City, and Sugar City are actually statutory towns, even by a whole city in their name. So it's actually quite confusing, and it just goes to show you that there really isn't a whole difference. I think, like I said, it usually comes about when the town or city is founded. They choose whether to be a city or a town. I don't know if you're going to get into the difference between home rule and statutory.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
But that's part of it too. And I guess just in regard to what you just said about districts, there are in the state, there's taxing districts, like the cemeteries. There's 2 cemeteries in the county that are actually taxing districts. The school districts are taxing districts. It means they have legal ability to collect property tax. Typically, it's property tax, not sales tax. And we could get down a huge rabbit hole talking about all this, but that's the distinction Preston was talking about with our fire district. They're not a part of the town, they're their own district that does collect a portion of the property tax that everybody pays on their property, and that's what funds their activities.
Yeah.
So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, John. So moving on to services.
Quick question.
Yeah,
So is the school in Ridgway, is that like considered in your county, or is it special district? Or do they overlap?
the high school, the secondary school.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, Ridgway School District is within the city, the town of Ridgway, sorry. But it's its own taxing district, and it does show how they overlap.
I was wondering if it was own separate thing or something, because it was like kind of on the outskirts of town.
It's
Yeah.
still within the town.
It falls within the town. I mean, you have, I'm sure you have peers that don't live in Ridgway. They live on like Log Hill. Well, Log Hill's still Ridgway address, but not within the town. But I imagine you have peers that go to school.
Where you live, Cooper, is not in the town of Ridgway. It's out of town.
How do people go about drawing like school districts? Because I live up on Elk Meadows and I'm in the Uray school district, but I have to drive through Ridgway to get to Uray.
And I don't understand why.
Probably
that is.
closer to your A.
That's,
Well, yeah,
That's a-
but
it's when they draw things like that, they tend to draw them on a map and not take into account the roads that get you there. So on a map, Elk Meadows is closer to Ray. I don't even know if it's closer to Ray than Ridgway, but it's probably almost in between. But when they drew the boundaries for the school districts, they drew it around Elk Meadows. It's been that way forever. And everybody complains about it. But the nice thing is in a county as small as Ray County, you can choose which school you want to go to. I mean, our daughters, one went to Ridgway School, one switched to US School. We lived in town.
To answer your question.
Yeah.
You have a Ridgway, right?
I do, yeah,
Yeah.
but I have to like get accepted every year. Which is
Yeah, so you have to,
strange.
interesting. This slide is just meant to depict the types of services that local governments provide. It's not, I'm gonna look. Yeah, not all of it applies to Ridgway, but I'll go into more detail on that. Just running through the bullets, local governments build and are responsible for maintaining roadways, running community centers, parks, of course, organizing community events, operating law enforcement departments and fire and emergency type departments, providing public transit, managing all things public works, including water, sewer, road maintenance, trash pickup. There's a lot of elements to public works. And then providing public health care and human services. That last bullet, health and human services, is typically a service that rests in most jurisdictions at the county level. That specific to our community, health and human services is provided by Ridgway County. And then in italics at the bottom, not every local government is the same. Not every local government provides the same type services, but the intent is the same. They all have the same model.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah.
Why don't we provide like public transit? Is that like just because we're pretty small and it's not?
Yeah, good question.
It's like Telluride has the Golden Goose.
Right.
A lot of money.
Money, you definitely need a revenue source or funding earmarked to operate something like that and to advance it if there's definitely a need. I've only been here 2 years. I would suspect that there's never really been a need presented here in Ridgway. Of course, it's really, really small, but that could certainly change down the line depending on how Ridgway grows and what the town makeup of the town council is and where the priorities lie.
And I think most people would say that what we really need is regional transit, right? We need a bus that travels regularly between as far as Grand Junction to Telluride and has a regular route. But again, it costs a lot of money to do something like that. And to do a regional effort like that would take a lot of coordination and money tossed in from all the communities that you can go through. And then there's bus staying.
Yeah.
They run a bus through here. I think they only come through once a week.
I feel like it would be something would be good if there was like a bus that went up to Log Hill and like, because then it would. I feel like that would be helpful for people that don't have their license.
Bus between Ridgway and Ray.
Yeah.
So let's think about that. So would this be a free bus subsidized by the town, or would it be fare driven?
I mean, I feel like it would be best if it was free, but also like we're not Telluride and we don't have all the rich people that Telluride does. That's a little harder to like do. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it would be cool if like people in Log Hill and out of town could get to Ridgway and out of Ridgway easier without like only taking the school bus and like coordinating their lives around like school.
This is impossible.
Yeah. Anyway.
So a couple thoughts, and John was touching on some of that. I know the county, they have a committee or some sort of, and they're planning to resurrect it soon. It's like a transit advisory type board or council, or it's probably just the commissioners, but they are looking to revive all things transit in Ray County soon to talk about what's needed. That it's probably been 2, 3, or 4 years since they last kind of talked about transit in the county. So. So more, well, this is specific to regulations that are that you can find of most, if not all, local governments enacting or having in place specific to public safety and you know, curfews, anti-gang measures, speed limits. Some of those, or I should say all of those really apply to Ridgway, but I don't think in the town code you would find any regulations specific to curfews, anti-gang measures, some stuff like that, probably typically found in more urban areas.
I thought
naturally.
we had a curfew, don't we?
I don't know that there's
Yeah.
a.
I always heard that we had one, but it was like something no one knew about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something that.
Maybe it was just our parents
I think
trying to
you're-
make us come
Yeah.
home.
Very good idea.
No, because my curfew was always before the actual town curfew or like town curfew.
Gotta
I thought it
check
was
that
like
out.
10 or
Maybe there's
11.
something in there.
I think I heard
11.
11 too. That's my mom was on.
Why is it that a lot of towns have, is it just like safety measures for curfews?
Why they
Yeah,
have
like why
curfews in
they have
place?
them.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety is probably the number one driver of that. My parents used to say nothing good happens after 11 o'clock or whatever time I had to be home by. So I think that's a component. It really varies from town to town. Some cities don't have any regulations related to curfews. Some do. So it really just depends on what I was talking about this before, what the priority is. But specific to your question, purely safety, like get people off the streets and make sure no trouble is being made.
Do you kind of know like what, I guess like punishment?
That's what I was
is
gonna ask.
If like you are out past the like town curfew?
So good question. Again, I don't know. I really don't think there's a curfew in the town code. I'll check and I'll report back if I do find an actual curfew in the code. If there is, and someone's found in violation of the curfew, we have very specific provisions in the code about enforcement, administrative enforcement in general, and penalties imposed for violations of the code, including curfew violation. So there's a very systematic procedure outlined for that.
Would you get arrested?
Probably.
I feel like they'd probably just be like, this is a warning, and then just keep saying that. Like,
That's a
the
good
cops
point.
really want to deal with kids that are running around past like 11.
Well, like an adult.
Or maybe just
like,
have you go.
Yeah, they just be like, go home.
That's a good point. And that's part of the community policing model that we here in town and other communities across the region, everywhere for that matter, should be following. Answer your question, yeah, if the curfew was midnight and someone stopped you, like a deputy stopped you at 12:30 and said, hey, what are you doing out? You're not going to get arrested unless you have maybe a spray can and you're spraying the side of a building, right? Now that's an extreme example, but I think you get the gist. I think what Caleb or Maisie, sorry, was saying is fully true. Really, our marshal's office does a really good job trying to issue warnings for things and establish relationships and try to get folks not to make the same type of mistakes. So again, the regulations we have in place are very specific and govern what to do if someone breaks the law. But I'll check on the curfew thing. I think you guys are fine, but maybe be home when you're supposed to be home. Make sure you listen to your
All of
parents.
our parents just lied to them.
More on regulations. I'll try to move through this. You got land use regulations specific to planning and zoning, historic preservation, signs. Sign regulations is a big one. I shouldn't say a big one, but it can be a hot topic. Absolutely. When you're telling folks what kind of signs you can have on their property, residential or commercial, specifically commercial. Then regulations for business, things like rent control, parking requirements. Those are just some examples. So getting into services that the town of Ridgway provides. I mentioned public works before. That includes services administration, streets maintenance, water maintenance, parks maintenance, water treatment, sewer maintenance, and engineering as well. So it's a very wide range of services within the umbrella of public works, but that's a big one. We don't have a very large public works department. We have 4 guys that are out there on a day-to-day basis, doing their best to maintain our utility infrastructure, make sure water's coming down from the water treatment plant, and that water's being just discharged into the river from the sewer treatment plant in an appropriate way. And add that to all their other responsibilities, it's a lot, even just for a small town. And then when you think about larger cities, it's crazy. Like if you go to Montrose, there's a lot of infrastructure to maintain on a day-to-day basis. Marshall's office, we were talking about this a little bit. They're responsible for providing general law enforcement to maintain public peace and safety, protect life, property, prevent crime. They conduct largely our deputies, depending on the issues that come up. They are tasked with conducting investigations, apprehending violators, providing patrol services. That's a big one. Monitoring speeds and stuff. I'm sure you all see them sitting on the side of the road monitoring speeds. Speed enforcement's a big one here in town. I'm sure you've heard that. And then enforcing other town regulations, and then state and federal statutes as well. We have, it's not really formal, but we have a community development department with planning services, building services, and community initiatives as well. And then our town clerk's office tasked with providing things like records management, administration of sales and lodging tax, permit administration, election administration, municipal code administration, human resources. There's a lot. There's a lot in that specific department. Any questions? You guys are doing a good job typing up with your questions. Thank you. So Ridgway follows what we call the council manager form of government. When you get into larger cities, specifically the Denvers, the Los Angeles, the Houstons, the New Yorks, they don't. They're so big. They don't follow the council manager form of government. They typically follow like a strong mayor. Who's taken a standard government or civics course? And is that it?
We take it next year.
Next year. Okay. Well, you'll probably learn a lot more about the types of government, but for cities this size, smaller and medium-sized cities and towns, the council manager form of government is prevalent. It's a business model focused on efficiency and effectiveness. The town council, town board, board of trustees, whatever they're called. Here in Ridgway, it's the town council. They represent the interests of their constituents. They're elected to represent the interests of their constituents. They establish a vision for the community. Something like the master plan. I'll go into that on another slide. They set policy, provide general oversight of the government, and adopt an annual budget. And they also appoint the manager, the town manager, or the chief elected chief executive. The town manager is tasked with overseeing the day-to-day operations of the town, making sure everything's working right, people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and making sure folks are getting what they need. And the town manager is tasked with carrying out the directives of the town council and executing the policies and actions that are, or other actions that are enacted by the town council. The manager, if you haven't gathered this, I'm the manager for Ridgway. I serve at the pleasure of the town council, translate policy and or try to help translate policy and visionary ideas into tangible results. Try to develop approaches. There's a typo, sorry. Approaches to community challenges that come up throughout the course of the year. Make policy recommendations to the town council for consideration and final decision by them ultimately. Look to align the administrative systems with the adopted or collectively agreed upon values, mission, policy goals defined by the town council and really the community. Develop and oversee the annual budget. That's a big one. We just got through our annual budget process not too long ago, just last week. And then the town manager's tasked with supervising department heads and spearheading the procurement of products and services. This is what John was talking about earlier, but Ridgway is what we call a home rule municipality. John, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll try to tackle that. Basically, there's two kinds of municipalities in the state. One's called a statutory town or municipality. One's called home rule statutory. We were a statutory municipality up until the mid-90s, I think. Which just means most statutory municipalities in the state are the smaller ones that have never really had the reason to go home rule. When you go home rule, you have to have an election, you have to have a home rule commission that drafts your home rule charter, and your charter is sort of like your constitution. When you go home rule, you can customize your rules and regulations. When you're statutory, you have to follow the statutes, in other words, the laws of the state as to how your system is arranged and works. Statutory municipalities have town boards, and home rule tend to have town councils, but they can also be, they can choose from a number of different forms of government. The town of Ophir, I don't know if Ophir is home rule, but they're one of only a couple places in the whole country where everyone in the town has a say in what the town does. When they have town meetings, everybody comes and they all vote, and it's not, so it's like everyone in town is a town council person.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yep. I forget what they call that. It's like I'll try to look it up. But so yeah, home rule just gives you a whole lot more control over how you function. As you decide, like statutory municipalities in the state always have their elections in April every year. We could have changed that if we wanted when we went home rule, but we decided to keep it so that we didn't conflict with the November elections. Other examples.
I mean, I think that's a good job summing it up. I guess in short, home rule cities and towns have a lot more flexibility and more power. Careful about the word power, but more power than statutory cities and towns.
Certainly more flexible.
Flexibility. Yeah. And John was talking about this already. The town of Ridgway has what we call the town charter. It's a constitution, or you can liken it to a constitution for the town. It defines the organizational forms, the powers and duties of all the town officers. You're right, looks like 1993 was when the Ridgway Home Rule Charter was established and adopted. And the charter, what's interesting about the charter is it can only be amended by a vote of the people. It's really, really hard to change what's actually been adopted in a charter. Whereas a municipal code that houses all the town's ordinances and rules and regs, it's much more easily amended. And all the next slides will go into how you do that.
When was the code written? Like when the town was founded?
It was founded in 1891.
Oh, really? So is it, do you guys like interpret it differently? Or
No, you're talking about the code?
Yeah.
Yeah, the code evolves over time and is amended. Some laws are just completely stricken down, some are amended. New laws are added all the time, like probably for the longest time we didn't probably have zoning codes. Zoning codes became a thing in probably the middle of the last century. And things like our master plan gets updated regularly. So yeah, the main thing I think, or one of the main things we should take away from the discussion is how much the charter is like our constitution. The fact that it can only be changed through a vote of people is just like the constitution of the state or the country. While I have it, I did look up Ophir. Ophir is a home rule municipality, and they're governed by a general assembly, which means that basically the whole town gets
Sounds
together.
interesting. That's really interesting. So planning commission, any more questions? Planning commission consists of 7 members who must be qualified electors of the town. They're responsible for reviewing land use submittals, including zoning, zoning and subdivision applications, conditional use permits. And I don't expect you guys to know all of what I'm listing off, but variances. Some actions are required to be forwarded to, not actions, but the recommendations as part of those actions are need to be forwarded to the town council for the town council's consideration and ultimate say. They're also vested with the duty of recommending elements and revisions to the town's master plan. Who knows what a master plan is? No one?
It sounds like something evil.
Yeah, right.
I think it's like, isn't it the town's like long-term goals? Like, it's kind of, it's not like, what are we doing tomorrow? It's more like, what do we want Ridgway to look like over the next few years and in the future?
Well said. That pretty much sums it up. So it's an officially adopted advisory document. Underline and capitalize advisory document. It's not the law of the land, but it's really meant to guide everybody. You know, very a lot of public engagement, very collective to really guide, as Anna was saying, guide the town into the next 10 to 20 years or whatever the planning horizon is. It's a really big deal. And Ridgway underwent a huge effort to update its master plan in 2019. Right? Yeah. So it outlines the community's vision and goals for the next, again, 10 to 20 years, beyond that even. Very comprehensive. It addresses things like land use growth, growth and development, community character, historic preservation, economic development, tourism, parks, open space, and it goes even beyond that. Some communities call it a master plan, evil, if you will. Some people call it a general plan. Some communities call it a comprehensive plan. There's another example I can't remember, but those are typically what you community plan. It just varies from city to city. So going back up, kind of jumping around, types of actions by the town council. I was getting into this earlier, but ordinances are local laws enacted by the town council. They're required for every act making an appropriation, creating indebtedness, authorizing the borrowing of money, levying a tax, establishing regulations for which a penalty is imposed, like a curfew, if that's applicable to town. Ordinances which create regulations are placed into the municipal code formally through codification. They're also used to amend and repeal sections of the municipal code. So that kind of goes back to what John was saying, and that in 1891 or whatever it is, when the town was formally established, and the first go at putting the code in place happened. It's a living document. It can be amended from time to time via ordinances. Resolutions and other types of policy actions are acts of relatively permanent nature. They remain in effect until rescinded or amended by the town council. They may enact legislation or policy that is not subject to penalties for violation. Resolutions are also used to state the town council's collective opinion or position on something. So another type of action is a proclamation. We have proclamations that come before the town council fairly frequently throughout the course of the year, simply to express appreciation for someone in particular, an event, an organization. They're usually requested by a supporting organization. Any questions? No. Open meetings law. This one's really interesting. So here at the town and local government in general, all meetings, whether formal or informal, are open to the public. They have to be open to the public. Colorado open meetings law allows public access to all meetings, with the exception of what are called executive sessions. Simply put, executive sessions are closed door meetings, but you have to meet certain criteria to have those closed door meetings. And I shouldn't say a lot, some communities get criticized heavily for how often they have those closed door meetings, or just, any city or town could be challenged for what they would characterize or think could fall as an executive session. Some of the purposes for having an executive session include receiving legal advice from legal counsel or an attorney. Yeah.
I was just wondering if the Ridgway Town Council, are all meetings public, or are there closed door meetings too?
Yeah, good question. They're all open to the public, especially regular or special meetings of the town council. Every once in a while, there is an executive session that's specified on the agenda, and it's explained on there pretty clearly that it's a closed door session, not available to the public. And the agenda item must state the exact reason on what it's for, and it has to meet one of those criteria: legal advice, a specific legal matter, negotiation, a personnel matter, or another subject that's protected by law. There's a variety of others. So to answer your question, yeah, all meetings are open to the public.
So when it comes to like making decisions or like approving things, are all those decisions made, like, do the members decide in the middle of those meetings?
Yeah.
They don't like have private meetings to where they. Okay.
No, good. So yes, all decisions of the town council via formal motion and vote, formal action. Some actions require formal public noticing by way of, actually posting a piece of paper saying town council will act on this ordinance at this date and time. I could go into more detail on that, but that would really be getting into the nitty gritty. But they must act as a body at a formally designated meeting.
So do you have to announce when you're having, if it's open or closed, like, do you have to announce that it's happening? So like, even if the public isn't allowed, you have to say that it's happening?
Yeah.
You couldn't all just like meet up and just
Right,
talk?
right. So exactly, the public, the media, they all need to be afforded the opportunity to know and understand that an executive session may happen. And typically it happens in the middle of not in the middle, either at the beginning. Here in Ridgway, it happens at the beginning of a regular meeting or an end of a regular meeting. And so everyone has the same access to the agenda. And on there it clearly states that when all this business is over with, the regular business, town council plans to go into an executive session to talk about a legal matter or a subject, something subject to negotiation. Those are just examples. So does that answer your question?
I just have one more question.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is, if this relates to it, but if there are like, if the council, like does not have the same opinions and they're like really debating something, does that continue to happen? Like if someone came with some plan that they wanted to do and the council members, like, it wasn't just like one person versus everyone, like they were really like debating it. Is that something that can be brought into an executive session, or do you just like debate that publicly?
Good question. It would, based on what you presented there, it would be debated publicly. If there was, especially if there was no real sensitivity to it. Again, if it met the criteria, it could certainly be advised by an attorney or legal counsel to go into executive session. It really just depends on the gravity of the item. But it's always best to try to keep discussions up, in the public as transparent as possible, right? I don't know if that got into your question, but really try to be very specific about what actions are on the docket on a council meeting agenda. And then council goes one by one, led by the mayor, through each item, discussion. If there's contention or there's just doesn't seem like they're getting anywhere and no decision can be made, it could always be continued, meaning we're not ready to make a decision. Let's do it at the next meeting. Kick the can down the road type of thing. They could table it like, well, we don't think we need to talk about this anytime soon. We'll talk about it in a few months. Let's table it. Most often they're continued to ask town staff to look into it more and provide more information, stuff like that. But typically doesn't happen. I haven't seen it happen too often around here. Not yet anyway. more on open meetings law. I know you got to go here in a few minutes, but each state has its own variation of open meetings law or sunshine law. And again, it really revolves around making sure public business is conducted in the public so that everyone has access to it, everyone knows what's going on, and that it's transparent. There's specific requirements for open meetings, noticing of those meetings, minutes requirements, master plan we talked about, strategic plan. Here in Ridgway, we have what's called a strategic plan. It's we'll try not to read this whole thing. It's developed and adopted to guide decision-making. It's done in conjunction with the budget cycle and the budget adoption process, so that monies can be set aside to accomplish everything that's on the strategic plan. All in all, it's really just a work plan for the next year. So Ridgway has a very specific strategic plan for 2022 that was just adopted last week, and it sets out council priorities and kind of the work for staff for the next year. Doesn't include everything, but there's a lot of good projects, programs, and initiatives to work on. Budget almost done here, and then you guys might have some more questions or not. Budget's a big deal for for a lot of people. You know, one only has not everybody, but a lot of us only have a certain amount of money to work with on any given day or year, and you got to manage it appropriately, right? Well, with the town, budget's a big deal. So the fiscal year for the town of Ridgway begins on the first day of January, ends on the last day of December. The town manager and staff prepares a budget for review and then ultimately adoption by the town council, so that all the work being proposed can be undertaken that next year and has the appropriate amount of money to do all that work. By law, the budget and then the property tax mill levy, they must be approved no later than December 15th of each year. We adopted ours, the town council adopted ours on last Wednesday, so the 8th, so plenty of time in advance of the 15th. And it contains things like detailed expenditures, revenues, balances for each line item, pretty standard stuff that you would expect would be in a budget. Just to give some more, and this is the last slide, more information on Ridgway's budget. The town operates on 3 different funds. The general fund, which is like, think of the budget, it's like the main fund, it's the operating fund. We also have what are called the Water Enterprise Fund and the Sewer Enterprise Fund. Again, the general funds used to account for resources associated with government, you know, running the day-to-day operations, including revenues derived from taxes, fees, licenses, and appropriations appropriations from other agencies. Our 2 other enterprise funds, again, water and sewer, they're self-supporting funds used to account for operations that are financed and operated in a manner similar to private industry, private business, or private business enterprises, with a primary source of revenue received from monthly user fees, you know, water billing, you know, sewer rates, stuff like that. The budget tracks revenues and expenditures to complete capital projects that are identified and set out by the town council each year. Things like infrastructure upgrades and construction in new facilities. So that's a little bit more about how Ridgway's budget is set up. That's a 30,000 foot view, but I could certainly go into much more detail on that and a lot of other stuff. But that for today is your local government 101 session. Good job getting through that.
Nice job, Preston.
I thought that was good.
Me too.
What questions do you have?
Oh, you know, when you were talking about zoning laws, zoning things. The first meeting the meeting that we went to when we were
Yeah.
applying or doing our interviews.
Right.
Is that what most of the discussion was about, like changing the zoning laws to like build something over there?
Yeah, so if I remember right, we talked about this the last meeting too. I think that's when Jack Petroselli had the rezoning application. Is that right?
There were like 2 from the same guy.
Yeah. but-
And then there was 2 from other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Specific to the ones you're talking about, what he had submitted, and actually he's not the property owner, he's the authorized agent. What it's worth. The submittal was an application to rezone a specific parcel or specific parcels in town.
Okay,
And it has to follow a very, I mean, if you go back to, let's see, it doesn't really go into it in detail, but we have in our zoning regulations, very specific requirements and then procedure for those types of applications. In this case, it's a rezoning application. And it's kind of a big deal. And if I remember right from that conversation, or from that meeting, one of the applications was approved and one was denied.
Yeah.
And I think the town council had cited, at least on the one that was denied, that the area, there hadn't been a substantial change in use in the area, and also there was a lot of interest in really understanding what they wanted to do, what the developer wanted to do with that parcel, before they would feel comfortable moving forward with the rezoning. Very, very standard and understandable citations there or reasons for denying the application. I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did, but I have another question. Well, first, do we have to raise our hands? Do we have to raise our hands to ask questions?
here, no.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
you don't. I mean, I appreciate you doing it just since I'm doing the
Okay.
presentation, but you guys are on the youth council, you guys can just talk.
That
Actually,
wasn't,
it's
that
on
wasn't
the-
my last question.
It's on the mayor to facilitate and kind of guide everyone too, so
Okay,
that's a responsibility.
and then, it kind of confuses me. I know there's residential zones and I know there's, commercial and industrial or that kind of zone. But I feel like the town of Ridgway, there's like Solar Ranch, which is residential, right? And then there's River Park, which is also residential. But then the industrial one is in between. Was that like purposeful or was the town just expanding and they needed more, like residential
There's
space?
a lot more to it than what you just described, because the Solar Ranch and River Park are both very new in terms of the history of Ridgway. That's when I moved here, there was no solar ranch.
Where do people live?
There's
Like-
like, you know where my house is?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, so that there's what's called historic residential, which is all the old part of town,
okay,
sort of between River Park and Solar
Okay.
Ranch.
that makes
And
sense.
within the historic residential sort of surrounds the core, which is right here. And we should show you the zone map next
Yeah,
time.
I'll bring it up.
Wait, where is my house historic residential, that area?
Where do you live?
Like Cottonwood, like,
It's probably technically not, because where you live is a subdivision that happened in like the 90s.
hmm,
That was, when you think of historic residential, think of the lots and blocks that are like square blocks with a street on all four sides and an
Like
alley down the middle.
like Ruben.
Like, I don't think Ruben's actual house is historical, but I think. he
But that
lives in
means-
the area
yeah.
where-
Yeah.
My house is just down the block from
Yeah.
Ruben's. That's all historic residential. It's kind of like between Amelia Street on the west, Lena Street, which is where the market is on the east, but it extends a little bit past that. Moffett Street, which is the street that runs by my house on the south, right before Solar Ranch, and then all the way to Charles and then Frederick and Otto and stuff out close to the industrial park.
Okay.
But he's gonna bring up the map and show you, but the core has, the historic business district is all right here where the Sherbino is and the True Grit and all of that. And it's all surrounded by historic business. And then the industrial park is also very new. It was all sort of developed and zoned in the last 20 years. When I say new, maybe not in terms of the length of your guys' lives, but as far as the history of the town, it's all very. So yeah, that's the zoning map. That light blue is historic residential in the middle. The sort of darker brownish color directly east of that is historic business. The light yellow is kind of general commercial. That's right. We actually, and this is an example of what Cooper, your question earlier about, ordinances and how they change. Like, I think I mentioned that we probably didn't have any zoning regs at all from like the late 1800s to at least the 30s or 40s or 50s, somewhere in there where the idea of zoning even became a thing. And then we rezoned, redefined and renamed our zoning districts in like the 80s or 90s when I was first involved. And the general commercial district was named then. And now there's a second residential district, which is just called, what's it called? R1 or something like
Mixed
that.
residential.
Yeah, mixed residential. Yeah, so that's Solar Ranch and Park and kind of the places in between. And of course, the industrial park is out where the animal hospital is, and the food pantry now, and ISON, Colorado Annex, all those things. So hopefully that makes it a little more clear.
So if you wanted to open a coffee shop, you wouldn't be able to open a coffee shop in Solar Ranch?
What shop?
A coffee shop?
It's mixed residential now though, isn't it?
No,
It is, but it doesn't really allow, the residential zones, historic residential and mixed residential only allow home occupations at this point.
Okay,
Things like my computer business or someone who, I don't know, has a design business or like your mom's pottery business could be a home occupation.
okay,
But no, you couldn't do something like a coffee shop because that involves retail traffic. And, you want to keep those kind of activities in the historic,
got it.
or at least in the business districts.
I have a question. It's not about this, but why, like, during meetings for like the actual town council, how come they like push things back? Because I feel like, is it just like you don't want to say yes and you don't want to say no? Like you just kind of want to like keep thinking about it? Like I'm just, like, why not just decide right there? Because,
Oh, I see. I'll let you answer too, John, but I think it really just depends. But it goes back to what I was saying before. Sometimes there collectively is a need for more information, or council members feel comfortable making a decision. And remember, when you're on the town council or an elected official, you're making decisions on that you think are in the best interest of the people who live here, your constituents. So it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Big deal if you think about it. So you definitely want to make sure you have all the information you think you need before feeling comfortable making a decision. So that's sometimes why you might see things get pushed out.
because I feel like with the bag ban, we like definitely came to a lot of meetings.
What's that?
With like the plastic bag ban, we definitely came to a lot of meetings because.
Well, and I think that was, I mean, my first answer to your question was going to be that we really rarely put things off. When things come to us, most of the time we at most have 2 meetings to discuss them. But something like the bag ban, when there was a lot of feedback from the community, it wasn't necessarily just a slam dunk. The business community, we want to make sure they had plenty of input and opportunity to comment, and that was a big deal, like Preston said. So that's an example of something that the reason it took a number of meetings is because it had to be kind of tweaked and refined.
Oh, yeah, because we kept changing because it had.
Yeah, we had to
be-
keep like making all the exceptions. Yeah.
So that's an example of something that just needs more input, needs more time to be tweaked. But I would say the vast majority of what we do, if it's an actual ordinance, the process is we have a first reading at one meeting and we introduce it and talk about it, make sure everybody knows about it. And then the next month we have the final reading and we vote on it to pass through. But there are a lot of things that come to us every month. If you were to come to every meeting every month, you'd see probably 80 or 90% of the stuff we do is dealt with that month, either passed or not.
Okay, I'm looking at the time. You guys probably want to get out of here, but any other questions on the presentation or anything else in general before the mayor moves us through the agenda?
Do I have to call to adjourn the meeting or do I just adjourn it?
Good, you can actually just adjourn it if you like, but let's talk about the next meeting.
Oh, yeah.
I put January 10th, that's another Monday. I think would be in line with what you all did for this meeting or wanted to have for this meeting. January 10th at 3:45, does that work?
Yeah, that's good. And that's like the week after we get back. from
Yeah,
break.
that'd be
So I
good.
think that's
When do you all start school again?
the fourth.
Okay, so that works, January 10th.
Yes.
Okay, I'll send a little meeting invitation if that's helpful. I don't know if it's helpful for you guys.
It definitely is.
All right, that's it. For me.
Okay, I adjourned this meeting. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Nice job.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.